Aloha mai kākou. We thank you for joining us at today's Campus Open Forum here in the Campus Center Ballroom. My name is Mark Arakaki from the UH Office of Communications, and I'm a proud University of Hawaiʻi at Mānoa graduate. Being in this ballroom really takes me back to the days when I was a student working just downstairs in the Ticket Information and ID office. I'd have to say that the renovations to the ballroom look absolutely fantastic, wouldn't you say? Right on. So again, big mahalo to Campus Center for welcoming us. And the ITS crew is in the hale, right in the back. We are live on Zoom as well. So how about a big hand for our ITS crew for streaming today's forum online. Mahalo. And also aloha to our virtual audience, e komo mai. Now here right in front of me, let's give a warm welcome to UH President Wendy Hensel and UH Mānoa Provost Michael Bruno. So at this time, presenting President Hensel with the lei is Brandon Reed, ASUH President. Brandon? It's Brandon in disguise. And presenting Provost Bruno with the lei is Hazel Baptista, Branding and Marketing Fellow. Mahalo. At this time, we'd like to invite President and Provost up to our living room here on stage. So this forum is really a chance for all of us to get to know our new president here at UH. This forum is an idea born out of President's consistent push to listen, learn, and start building connections with all the strands that make up our UH Ohana, faculty, staff, employees, and of course students across all our 10 campuses. Today's forum is also part of Hawaii Ku'u Home Aloha, a third annual event organized by the Hawaii Papa'okeao Native Hawaiian Place of Learning Advancement Office. Mahalo kākou to Punihe Lipe and her outstanding team. Please give a round of applause. All right, without further ado, we welcome you, President Hensel, into our UH Mānoa living room for the afternoon. I'll toss it to Provost Bruno for some opening remarks. Provost.
Thank you, Mark. I like that, our living room. Let's keep that up. So we will try to keep this as informal as we can. This is meant to be a listening session for President Hensel, and your opportunity to ask your questions very early on in your tenure. I know you've been drinking from the proverbial fire hose. It's been an incredible couple of weeks. So maybe in that spirit and in the spirit of kicking things off, I'll ask you a question. So you've been here a few weeks. What about, perhaps in particular, Manoa has surprised you?
So a couple things. For sure, the warmth of the people. I've said that before. It's not that it was a surprise, but the depth of the warmth and the genuine welcome that I've received has been so appreciated and really just a lovely thing that has touched me. I guess today is actually one of the moments that was most educational for me or most surprising. We visited several holy places on campus and learned that there are stories for each one of these things that are literally, I've been walking past and didn't realize the depth of the meaning for this community and the history attached to it. And it's really, I'm still processing this morning, and I'm sure tonight I'll be thinking about it and for a long time after. It's wonderful to be part of such a rich history of people and place, and yeah, very, very privileged to be here.
Thank you. It certainly is. And tomorrow we will be taking a walk with a group of folks, beginning over at Hawaii Nuakea and then coming through the campus, and there will be even more places to note. It is a remarkable campus. Come on in, everybody. Come to the front row. Just kidding, just kidding. This might be an unfair question because you really have only been on campus for a few weeks, but you've been, as you've told people, on the job for quite a bit longer than that. Early on, at this early stage, what strikes you as low-hanging fruit that you would like to focus on, perhaps in the next 6 months?
So low-hanging fruit suggests easy change, and I think we all know nothing is easy in large organizations. But just some initial impressions from conversations. There's some themes that have emerged, and I think one of them is that we have really significant opportunities to work together as a system to reach places that we cannot reach as individual campuses. And one thing I've been saying a lot to people is looking at where and how we provide at least a threshold standard of care to every single student who belongs at the University of Hawaii. So it's not that you're a student of the Maui campus or Kapiolani or Manoa. You are a University of Hawaii student, and that means something in terms of the support that we give you, the resources that are available to you, and that we work for the whole as well as for our individual campuses. So I think there's some very significant opportunities there that both can increase how efficient and easy it is to navigate the system, but also the effectiveness of our reach for our students, faculty, and staff. So one area, for example, technology. I think integrating technology more effectively across the system means we'll have better data, means we'll be able to take more information and make better decisions, and it makes sure that every student has that baseline standard of care in terms of student support. So just some early thoughts, but it seems to be a theme that people have been in agreement is a place that we can go together.
Great, thank you. Our ITS folks are back there taking note, I know. So, Mark, maybe we can open it up to the audience.
Sounds great. So at this time, we'd like to now welcome our audience, both in-house and online, to share any questions or comments with President Hensel. If you're here in person, please raise your hand if you have a question, and we'll get a microphone right over to you. And if you are joining us online, you can send your questions to the Q&A section, the section on Zoom. Question right here in the front.
Afternoon, Ms. President. As the only Israeli grad student on campus, I'm concerned about the recent ranking this campus 10th out of the 725 campuses in the US for teaching boycotting Israel in class. And we may know that anti-Israeli teachings may cross into anti-Semitic teachings, and that ranking was for anti-Semitism, for faculty who publicly called to boycott Israel. And I ask you, how are you willing to address anti-Semitism and any hate speech on campus?
It couldn't be a more important issue to ensure that every single student on our campus, from whatever background or political beliefs or origin, feels like they belong here, that they feel safe here, and that they feel included here. And I don't know that we've ever had a time when that's probably been more challenging to accomplish, given the very polarized political rhetoric that's out there, where our ideas of what is free speech, what makes people uncomfortable, what makes them feel unsafe, is increasingly in flux, both in terms of how we interact with each other, but also in terms of federal and state policy. So it's a really difficult time, which doesn't excuse anything in terms of the responsibility in Kuleana to ensure that everybody can be a student effectively and access their education. So I was disappointed to see that. I personally have not seen evidence of that, so I'm looking forward to having, that's part of the reason I wanted to have an open forum where I wasn't just meeting with the leaders in different areas, but would really allow members of the community to identify things that are on their mind, things that are of concern that maybe not be currently part of the conversation that's at the leadership table. So I appreciate you raising that issue. I'll be looking into it for sure. And for what it's worth, my background is as a labor and employment lawyer. And so my scholarship has been in the civil rights area, my work has been in that area, and so I'm very, very attuned to these issues and will be looking into it vigorously. So thank you for raising the issue.
Mahalo. Any more questions from our in-person? We have one question right up here in the front. Sarah's going to bring you a mic.
Thank you. It's my understanding that you've been spending a lot of time meeting with the legislature, and Provost Bruno certainly knows. You may not know that a few years ago they voted to give UH autonomy. That lasted about as much as a patch of snow would in Honolulu. So what, do you have any comments about the legislature and how UH can do better with them?
I spent a lot of time with the legislature. I think legislature and athletics are probably the two issues that have sort of been in my purview the most in these first few weeks. I think I've consistently answered this question because I feel the truth of the answer. The legislature correctly is interested in what we do. What we do is important to the people of the state. The funding that they provide is significant. You know, I think we really need to acknowledge we are funded at one of the highest state levels of any state in the United States. And that's something to really appreciate and acknowledge and recognize that the low cost of tuition, I understand it often feels high, but relatively speaking, the cost of attendance has actually declined, in part because of that legislative support. So I want to start with that, because the truth is we should be friends, right? We should be partners as we look to how we can not only meet the needs of our community within the university, but the greater community of the state of Hawaii. And so I've spent a lot of time in individual meetings with legislators, particularly on the higher ed committee, expressing my interest in having an open and transparent relationship where we acknowledge areas that we need to work on, but hopefully, and I think this is the important part, start from the premise that we all care about these issues and are trying our very best to answer what is really very, very difficult, complex circumstances in higher education at this particular moment. And so far, you know, obviously we're fielding challenging questions in a 4-hour hearing. That's a long hearing from my perspective. And the closer we get to questions that are about, 500-page reports and particular line items, I think we're getting farther afield from the big items that we can really move the agenda forward together. But overall, I've been appreciative of the message I have received, which is they want to see us succeed. They want to see me as a new president succeed, recognizing that the future of the state is affected by this university. And so we really are partners in that conversation. I hope we can continue to change the tone into one of really mutual respect and recognition of the important role that each of us plays in advancing this mutual agenda. So we have another hearing tomorrow. We'll see how it goes, but we're trying to change that narrative to be more productive, and I hope we get there.
Mahalo. As a reminder, if you just joined us, if you have a question in person, you can raise your hand and we'll bring a microphone over to you. And if you're watching on Zoom, please send your questions to the Q&A section on Zoom. We have a question up here in the front.
So, hi. Congratulations again, President Wendy Hensel, for your appointment. And, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you feel about it, your coming over as president also coincides with a change in our national leadership. So I'm an international student, I am a woman, I'm a scientist, and so, within the first 24 hours of the Trump presidency, there were a number of executive orders that were clearly meant for targeting kind of, vulnerable populations. And I wonder if there's any thought towards contributing resources, so understanding how UH can work with either the state or can work within UH to protect our most vulnerable communities. It's the beginning. There's going to be another 4 years of this, and just a lot of kind of backdrop of hope, but then also worry about what's happening at the larger.
No, I hear you. Certainly, any of us who've had alerts on our phone, they've been going off pretty much nonstop with the news of executive orders that have been passed. And what I can say for sure is we are paying close attention to each one of those. We are in the process of evaluating what it means and what it requires of us in terms of actual behavior. A couple things. First of all, this institution stands for diversity and equity and inclusion, and those values don't change depending on who's sitting in the national office. And so the question is, how do we go forward in an environment that may increasingly feel hostile toward that? And I think that's a fair, I don't even think that's really a political thing to say, because the orders that are coming out are pretty clearly do not talk about it. If you are labeling it as such, it is something that is not within this administration's purview. How do we balance that, right? Our commitment to those values with our also commitment to follow federal law and obviously be compliant. I mean, that is what we do. And so my last experience with the Trump administration, as I've told many of you, I was in a red state. I was in Georgia. I was a provost in the state of Georgia. And so I think actually it's helpful here in that was a much more receptive legislative audience to those edicts that were coming out. And so I have experience in looking at what is required and making strategic decisions of how do we best preserve what we value in an environment that can feel on a daily basis like there's some incoming, new explosion happening. So the good news is, and it is very important news, the state protects many of these same things that the federal government is moving away from. And so we'll be working with the state. Many legislators, kind of going back to the question about the legislature, have specifically asked me the question, how can we preserve these values and help the university enforce them in a time when it may feel that there are reduced federal resources for this type of programming. So I think there's a real willingness to partner, to band together, to identify alternatives to federal protection on the state level, and we will be exercising every resource at our disposal to ensure that every student, faculty, and staff member on this campus feels like they are part of this community going forward.
We have a question in the back.
Aloha, my name is Helene Sonora Pale. I am an alumni and staff here at the University of Hawaii. And before I ask my question, I just do want to acknowledge and inform you that this university sits on 100% stolen Hawaiian lands, lands that was taken illegally, seized without consent from the Hawaiian people, and has not yet paid adequate rent to our people for over a century. So I'm hoping in your new leadership that you can address that. As a student here, I fought for Hawaiian tuition waivers as a way to reconcile that for all Hawaiian students, and I think that it should definitely be on the table going forward. But my question is about the military grant that the University of Hawaii received, and I wanted to see if we could get a copy of that. You talked about transparency earlier. We have yet to see the contract between the University of Hawaii and the U.S. military, the Department of Defense. I enrolled here because I wanted to get a better education, and I think a lot of students here are the same thing. A university should not be in the business of genocide. of killing, of warfare. The university should be in the business of educating our community. This is a really important institution here in Hawaii, and I would like to see that contract. Is there a way we can get a copy of that contract? I believe it was about $285 million that was approved. And my other question to you is, did you sign that contract? Thank you.
Did I sign the contract? I believe it was done prior to my arrival. I have not seen the contract, so I don't know the answer as to whether it is a public document or not. So I can't answer that question.
It was in the paper. It was in the Star Advertiser a few days ago. And then it was also in, I think it was a Civil Beat in December of 2024. So it is public knowledge, but as the president, I was hoping you would know more about it. Thank you.
I can't comment on that because I don't have the answer. I have not seen the contract. It was whatever that contract was done before I arrived. But I certainly can look into whether that's the kind of document that can be publicly disclosed. So appreciate your question. But I don't personally have any information about it.
Mahalo. We have a question up here in the front.
Yeah, hi. I'm here today as both a graduate student and graduate assistant on this campus, and sort of responding to your statement about a labor and employment background. There are many of us who are interested in bringing labor union representation for graduate assistants to the UH campus and across the UH system. And I'm just curious, trying to get a sense of how open to that you may be. We would love to establish some sort of working relationship with you as the president and your office. It would be great if we could get a commitment to some sort of meeting within the first 100 days, maybe from today. We'll see. And just some sense of your familiarity with the labor and employment issues that are facing graduate assistants on our campus. I'm sure you're aware that we have new graduate housing that's going to be opening later this year. If you're living on a graduate assistant stipend, you are effectively priced out of all of that new housing. The rent costs more than we make in a year, so it's not accessible to us. So what are we talking about when we talk about a threshold of care and affordable housing? We also are not meeting the cost of attendance as disclosed on UH's own financial aid website. So if we could get some sense of how that number is being reached and why we are not considered adequate employees or workers to be meeting even the bare minimum, let alone a living wage, would be great.
Well, I start with the premise. The situation concerns me in the sense that it is not new to me, right? I always hesitate before drawing parallels to my prior experience, given the different context, different setting. But New York City is also extraordinarily expensive, and I was very concerned there about the level of stipends for exactly the reason that you articulated. It's a challenge in every public university to figure out that balance and the particular obligations to graduate students, who are both our students and our employees. So I appreciate you raising the issue. I'm certainly willing to have the conversation. That is something I'm committed to. I don't think any topic is off limits. It's important for us to be able to sit down and exchange ideas about what is possible and what is not possible. Beyond that, I want to be careful. I haven't looked at this particular issue or understood it in the context of the University of Hawaii. So yeah, let's get a time on the calendar for the organization, and we can have a conversation and lay out what the issues are and go from there.
Mahalo. We have one question from Zoom. The question is, there has been a lot of talk about eliminating the second language requirement at many college campuses. UH is also in the process of reevaluating the gen ed requirements. Where do you stand on the HSL requirement and the importance of world languages as part of the core general education requirements at UH?
So I don't know much about the specifics as it relates to the general education conversation. I know it's happening. I don't have a sense of what the issues are that have been raised or what the positions are of the various people. What I will say is the faculty is at the center of the curriculum. And so as an administrator, I'll be asking the question, what does the faculty think about this? Because I think they lead that conversation, and then we get involved on the back end. The one thing I'll say about general education in general is we have to look at it from more of a system level perspective. You know, that's an area where we are doing our students a disservice given the number of students that are transferring when we make it difficult in any respect for them to take the credits that they earned on one of our campuses and move to another campus. So, you know, thinking about how we streamline and make as simple as possible that transfer process for students is really critical, and I think should be part of that general education conversation. In terms of my respect for languages and world cultures, it couldn't be higher. And what I can say definitively is my 18-year-old is enrolled in that area at the University of Georgia right now. So I certainly appreciate the interest in it, the importance in it, and look forward to having that conversation with the faculty.
Thank you. We have a question up here in the front.
Hi, my name is Jenny. I'm a current undergraduate student here at UH Mānoa. I wanted to talk about period poverty and your system's plan to address it. So for reference, my classes are majority on the Dole side of the street of campus, and a lot of hot spots for period products are free and available for students in middle of campus over here. And this makes it very inaccessible for me, affects my education, my health, as well as my students. And there's also like SOAS and other departments nearby. And it's just very frustrating for me. And I reached out to other organizations within the community's college system, being like, okay, how can we address this within our department? And it turns out your system actually approved a resolution in 2023 saying we have to address menstrual health in this system. And so far what I noticed on the report and talking to these individuals at these campuses is that it's a patchwork solution. And one of the biggest constraints is resource allocation and a point of contact within higher administration specifically for health and health equity. So my question to you is like, I'm just a student. we're trying to get this addressed. What are maybe some things behind the scene that we may not be aware of regarding the biggest issues regarding resource allocation within the system, and how can students better advocate for basic needs? Because most of the time we just get stuck at higher administration. There's channels, we get lost, so I would really appreciate your advice. Thank you.
It's a great question. In any large organization, the question is, how do you effectively channel communication from the person experiencing the challenge to the person who can actually fix it, right? And one of the things I say all the time is, don't just complain to the person sitting next to you, complain to me, because I actually have the ability to fix it. But obviously your access is the issue, right? How do you get in front of the people who can solve the problem? And what I would say is, I mean, clearly we can identify in student affairs somebody who would be that contact person. I actually had this exact same conversation in my last position about, it isn't that people don't care. They care deeply about it, but nobody owns it, in which case they are responsible and then accountable, right, at the same time for ensuring that the policies we say we care about are actually carried out in a way that doesn't lay on the student to advocate for in order to receive. So I would say thank you for raising the issue. It's one that we can look at and identify who will own this. There probably is somebody already, but we haven't made that clear to the students. And it's really in every area of student access and student success, we need to make clear who owns that so that there's an easy line of communication. And really one stop so that you don't have to figure it out every time you have a different problem that pops up on campus. So thank you for raising that.
Thank you. Any more questions from our in-person audience? Okay, we're gonna go to a question on Zoom. Congratulations on your appointment. As you may know, Hawaii, and particularly the University of Hawaii, is known for its bureaucratic processes. What steps are you taking to reduce inefficiencies, especially in fiscal operations? For example, reimbursements for funded research expenses across various colleges often take 2 to 3 months. How do you plan to address and improve these delays?
Yeah, that's a big question. I will start with the premise every large organization has these challenges, and in part because they weren't designed to address the issues that we now deal with. Right? We sort of piecemeal develop over time in ways that we don't even see the roadblocks that are created to the end user, kind of like what we were just talking about, but at a larger scale. I was telling the students today, my doctrinal background is law, but it's disability law in particular, and civil rights law. And so much of my training was universal access and design. To really ask the question, if we were to start from the beginning to deliver this service or to do this function, would we create a system that looks anything like the one that's currently in place? And then to work to eradicate the pieces that just don't make sense, but that are literally brick walls for the people trying to move through the system. The only way to do that is to talk to the people who are the end users and understand where those pain points are. And then systematically and without, frankly, from a resilience perspective, never stopping, removing them one after another. And we really are at an amazing time for that to happen with the explosion of artificial intelligence and generative AI and the infusion of technology that lets us routinize things in ways that the end user doesn't have to touch, that lets us do the high-level intervention when those problems arise. And there are programs on the research side that work to that end. I don't know what we have in place. I've started this conversation. I've heard this concern when I had a meeting with the faculty last week. So it's really understanding where those pain points are and then identifying what solutions are possible to fix it. But we have to fix it. If we say research is important, and we know that it is, especially at Mānoa, then we have to create a system where the faculty member, where the staff member doesn't spend half their time just navigating the grants process and hoping that it comes through. So yeah, stay tuned. We're definitely looking. I know there's already been some really good work in this space, but there's obviously more to do. So look forward to hearing from you as to where we can do better.
Thank you. A question in the back. Sarah's bringing over the mic.
Aloha, my name is Alex. I'm representing KTUH and Student Media Board. My question is regarding interest income. Student Media Board received a notice in October of last year. We were notified that the system, on a system level, here at UH Mānoa, on this campus in particular, the directive that came from the system that each campus would be able to make their own determination of how they would appropriate those interests, the interest that was allocated in our accounts. So moving forward from what we've understood is that the President's office made this executive decision to move our interest that we had collected off of our student fees, and they would repurpose them for whatever needs that they saw fit. When I look at the revenue of the UH system that from the 2023, we're sitting at $123 million. And we look at expenses of $68.5 million. My question is, how can we better move this conversation forward to actually have an actual dialogue? Because we've tried to engage other levels of the system to actually have an actual dialogue. And how can we move forward that conversation so that we both have a mutual understanding, and then also so that we can move forward in this?
I don't think I'm familiar with this. I think, yeah, we certainly can discuss it. I know one of the reasons I would think, and it's always dangerous to think, right, without confirmation, but I would imagine part of that is to encourage students to spend the money on programming in the semester in which it accrues so that it benefits the students who are actually paying into the fee fund, yeah. So, if that's the goal, and maybe there are additional ways that we can effectuate that, but I would certainly think that the interest earned would also go towards student activities and things of that nature. So it's not that it's not student money, I assume, yeah, but it's particular money to encourage you to spend it for the benefit of those who have paid into the fund. Happy to have that conversation and see how we can effectuate that end more effectively for student organizations. But it's just a good example. I think we make so many decisions because we have to. We're just constantly executing at this level as things come through. It's important that we establish regular opportunities to speak with students, with faculty, with staff, so that we can build a relationship. And as we begin to have these conversations, your input is at the front end, of these conversations versus feeling like you weren't heard on the back end. And it's always challenging because at least from my experience, what I found is I can speak to 10 students, but if I didn't speak to the one student who wasn't there that day, they think we didn't actually consult on that matter. So creating some regular engagement structure where we both know that we're going to come together and have these conversations, I think is a good way to ensure that the process is one that we both feel good about.
Thank you. Any more questions? Right up here in the front, and then we'll go to you.
Thank you. Hi, thank you for having us today. As a state that has a single public higher education system and a single K-12 system, what do you see as some of the challenges and opportunities in the K-12 education system and UH's role in navigating those or supporting those, both in general and your role as a leader?
I think it's an enormous opportunity. To really move the needle on student success, beginning at the very beginning and going all the way through reskilling over the entire lifespan. It gives you a sense of the significance of this institution, right? Just saying that. And so I know a lot of really good work has already gone on in this space, but connecting that into the workforce as well so that we're projecting out and proactively identifying where is industry headed, where are the needs of the state headed, so that we are leading into that change from the beginning all the way through rather than reacting as those pressures come upon us, I think is just a tremendous opportunity for us. So I'm excited. I've already had some early conversations with the P through 20 folks, but I think we can take it to an entirely different level by working together, especially if we talk about such things, talk about breaking down silos. If we had a single technology system and information sharing, think about the ease that we could make for matriculating students into higher education and making it just a seamless kind of experience. So just one very simplistic example, but tremendous. I think on the challenge side, I'll draw on my experience. Believe it or not, New York City was kind of similar in the sense that the City University of New York, where I was, 80% of the students in public high school in New York went to a CUNY institution. So it was very much that same sort of streamline. And the downside of that can be a little bit of a laissez-faire atmosphere, attitude that if we open the door, they will come because this is where they come. Sure, you can go somewhere else, but the vast majority are going to come here. That works okay when there are students, a lot of students. But as the demographics shift, as change accelerates, as our need to be responsive and current and relevant increasingly becomes challenged by the speed with which life is happening and change is happening, it can catch us flat-footed and a little bit unresponsive to the needs of the day. So I think it's a good moment for us to recognize that we need to capitalize on the upside and guard against the sense that we don't have to keep working to meet the needs of that constituency that's coming to us. So I would say stay tuned on that one and would be really interested. I know many of you are working in this space across the faculty and staff. If you have ideas where we can really elevate this discussion, I think we have unique opportunities here. And another area where the legislature should be enormously receptive because we're literally touching every single person in the state.
Thank you. I know we have 2 questions up here in the front.
Good afternoon, Clem Guther, the University Librarian. And Michael's probably thinking I'm going to ask for money.
Everybody does.
Everybody, that's true. One of the challenges that I see going forward is, and it certainly was evident in the Ways and Means Higher Education hearing last Thursday, is the need for more collaboration across the state and across our system. The library system is not set up in a way to easily support that. And not only with funding, but just in terms of structure. So one of the things I would me and my colleagues would really enjoy an opportunity to talk to you about opportunities and challenges there, because as programs sort of spread across the campus, one of the things that we want to avoid is disparity of access to resources. So, if you're taking the program at Hilo instead of Manoa, you still want access to the same material. And at this point, that is not possible. But it's a big challenge going forward.
That's exactly the kind of place we need to be thinking about. How can we collaborate more effectively? And if we've created rules that preclude that from happening, we can also then eradicate those rules and figure out how to support it in a monetary, with resources. So that, as you said, that's what I mean by that baseline of care. It shouldn't be that you have access at Hilo that you don't have here. And usually we know it's the opposite way around, right? But that's really important. I actually have done some really interesting work in that in other places. So I'd be curious, certainly I think there's usually collaboration, we can talk about it, but in the purchasing side, right, in terms of the periodicals and the resources, and thinking through how to make them more accessible across the system would definitely be something I would be interested in exploring. A lot of opportunity there, I suspect.
Thank you. Did you have a question? Yes, you have a question right here.
Hi. I just wanted to say that it's really nice to be able to ask a question. Last week you came to the Manoa Faculty Senate, and it felt really nice to be able to ask a question there too, And so my question is, open house. Are you going to do it like on a regular basis?
Yeah, look, the last thing any of us wants is a performative encounter, right? I mean, again, in order for me to represent you, in order for me to champion this community, I have to understand this community. And that requires regular and ongoing engagement. It's not a one and done. And I often talk about, sort of this goes to your question of thinking systems and campuses, but we have to create opportunities for engagement that don't rely on good faith, right? We all want to do the right thing. We want to engage the right people in the conversations, but we often don't even realize that it implicates other people. This sort of goes back to the student fee issue. I could assume that students were implicated by that, but often there are academic departments that are implicated, or the registrar has to engage in the conversation. And because we're not systemically requiring that engagement, it relies on somebody's good faith in that moment to flag the issue and then reach out. The way to overcome that is to require regular engagement. So I look forward to talking to the community about what does that look like? From your perspective, what level of engagement would you welcome? I certainly am not above inviting myself regularly to other people's meetings. I've done that. I find people worry that I'm busy, and unavailable, when in fact I'm waiting for you to say, hey, we'd like you to come to our meeting to have this conversation. I hope that you will reach out to me and invite me to those things when it's an important conversation for us to have, and more importantly, when it isn't, so that we establish a relationship, so that we can build the trust, that when we get to a moment of dichotomy, and there will be some, right, where some of us are going to be happy and some of us are not, because we have to make a decision one way or another. There isn't an ambiguous middle for us to go to. We at least understand that we're good people trying to do our best and trying to jointly align our values for the betterment of the university. So I really look forward to that. It is true in every position that I've had, and it is particularly important to me here as I'm wearing two hats and not as present in this community as I would like to be. I know that's one of the issues that we're talking about, is what does that look like going forward? But for sure what it looks like is a regular, open opportunity without an invitation to come in and ask questions.
Thank you. I'm going to go to a question on Zoom. As you know, generative AI has significantly impacted education, transforming how we teach, learn, and conduct research. Given the rapid pace of Gen AI advancements and the local expertise that has emerged within UH in various disciplinary fields, I was wondering what your thoughts are regarding the role that UH could play not only at the state, but also national and international levels.
So whoever sent that question in, send me your email, because I totally agree with everything that you just said. And you know, going back to your earlier question about early opportunities, this is one that's front and center. It's something we have to pay attention to because it is going to be so impactful. I've asked this question of every audience that I've spoken with, so I'm going to ask you all, how many of you are using generative AI on a regular basis? How many of you are skilled users of generative AI? Okay, a few of you. Why do I ask? Because every single one of us needs to raise our hand in this setting to be effective going forward. And you all are actually well ahead of the curve. I was out at UH West Oahu last week, and maybe 10% of the audience raised their hand. And we have to change our way of thinking about this, right? The conversation sort of in the academy has dominated on cheating, on the risk of cheating. And of course, that is a significant issue, without question. But I will say somewhat controversially, it's the least of my concerns, because this is going to touch and change everything that we do in a way that's almost an existential change. It will change how we teach and the tools that we bring into the classroom and that students are supported by. It will absolutely change what we teach. Generative AI is like electricity. It's not limited to tech fields. It will touch every single area that we teach. And if we aren't training our students in how to use that, then we will be creating a permanent second class in terms of technology access and usability for the state. And then, of course, in operations, as we talk about how do you make these things work better, there are tools that are jaw-dropping, and most of them are coming from the free stuff. You know, we aren't even talking about the things that we're going to pay for. But it's a threatening thing for most of us. And our professors have to be leading in the classroom for something that many of them are very uncomfortable with or have not been supported in learning. And as someone who is, you can probably tell, action-oriented in these spaces, I started thinking, wow, how did I get so far behind? It's getting so far ahead of me. And I was like, wait, it's only been around for a year and a half, 2 years. And it's only going to get faster. So by the time we get comfortable with it, it will be 10 steps ahead, and it will continue to eclipse where we are. This is the area, as educators, we need to lead. That's what we do. We educate, and we have to begin with ourselves. So I will be, have already started that conversation, identifying who already here is doing this work. I know there's some really fantastic work being done. But how do we take those pockets and systematize it into an all-out strategy across the university in all aspects of what we do? And then, at the same time, partner with the legislature to train them so they understand the policy, so they understand the implications, and work with our workforce partners in the community to understand how it will affect what they do. The thing that I think about a lot, the academy exists as the center of expertise, right? It's a place that people come in because expertise sits there. That expertise is now leaving and going outside the academy because we are not keeping pace and cannot, in some respects, keep pace. That means we need to think in new ways about partnering with industry to come in and have us be their partners in training our students and ourselves in a way that hopefully is very supportive, very compassionate, but also very future-oriented. So we're not in 10 years saying that we're irrelevant to where we are in terms of curriculum and society. So as you can see, I'm really excited about this. It's scary, but it's an enormous opportunity for this university in particular, given where we're situated and who we serve.
Mahalo. Any more questions from our in-person audience? We have a question right here.
Hello there, my name is Samantha and I'm a ASUH Senator for the College of Arts and Sciences. There was a memo sent from Manoa Budget Office in September 2024 to student life development programs affecting our accounts and taking control of interest and pulling those funds together for covering a non-reoccurring cost associated with special campus priorities. If we do the math for the fiscal 2024 school year on our accounts, it would be almost $200,000 loss in student revenue just in this interest revenue fee. My question is, what are you going to do about this if there was no consultation done to the student life development accounts affected? And how will you remedy the loss these programs will go through?
I think this is the same question that we answered earlier. It's certainly worth a conversation to discuss. I think, again, the motivation behind that is to encourage the spending of those funds in the semester in which the students paid into that funds for their benefit. But certainly it's a conversation that we can have, and we'll follow up after this is over.
Thank you. Any more questions? We have a question right here.
Aloha. Jess Caleb. How do you plan on having the curriculum have more output than just learning? Because a lot of colleges, it's just learning and then not really applied, or there's no tangible output to your projects.
Well, I think about it, I guess, in a slightly different way. How do we ensure excellence? You know, that we are not just, and the AI piece goes into this. If all we're teaching is rote, you know, memorization type of, or objectives that are concrete, how is that different than what a computer is going to be able to do or already can do? And so those critical thinking pieces, right? And the conversations and the dialogue and the professionalism and the civics, all those things are wrapped into the curriculum that we do. And it's a conversation to have with the faculty of where they feel that they're not able to do that, or where we can do better in achieving those goals. But there's never been a more pressing time for us to have that conversation, I think, for multiple reasons. But I'm looking forward to having it and hearing your thoughts on maybe where we haven't gone hard enough or fast enough, or what's missing from our current practices in that regard. We have to strive for excellence, not just okay. And I look forward to championing that.
President Hensel, welcome again, and thank you for your visit here today. This may be too institutionally in the weeds, so apologies if it is. Have you given any early thoughts to the right size of UH system? One of the interesting phenomenons, for at least for me here in the time I've been here, is that system and the campuses often get reified as different things. So, you know, there's Bachman Hall and there's Hawaii Hall, and sometimes they're aligned and sometimes they're not. So that system becomes this thing, right? And the question is, in your early impressions, and I know it's probably an unfair question, is system nimble enough? Do you see areas in which it could contract or grow? And how are you thinking about those set of relationships? I know it's a very big question.
No, I mean, it's a fair question. It's something I spend a lot of time thinking about. You know, I think the benefit for me is I've sat on a campus for a long period of time. And people usually laugh when I say I did not like the system when I sat in the campus role. I felt like they got in the way. They didn't understand the challenges on the campus. I think I've said that's where administrators go to become irrelevant. Here I am. And I suppose, lured to the system at the City University of New York in part by just the impact opportunity, right, to affect nearly 500,000 people in the decisions that were being made. And so it helped me. I think that campus experience really shaped how I viewed the role of the system. So it's less about, to me, about size than where is the value add, right? If the system exists to help us reach places at scale that individual campuses cannot do without the coordination among them. And there are many, many places and opportunities here that I don't think we've even begun to have that conversation. And people say, well, where are those resources going to come from? A lot of the resources are just misaligned. You know, if we're spending the same dollars 10 times versus asking, could we solve it with a single purchase that we could leverage the money down to, you know, to a much lower price point, libraries being a great example, right? Then we're just wasting our resources by giving autonomy in ways that doesn't actually advance the mission of the individual institution. Because there's definitely some that does. You want that uniqueness on a single campus to be able to be defined in ways that are held by the stakeholders on the campus. But some of that can't occur if the system doesn't act. So my message to my team has always been, where are we value add? That is where we will engage. And where do we get in the way? And then we remove ourselves from that conversation because we are actually impeding the work of innovation that's taking place on the campus. So that's the framework that I use. I don't think that we've, you know, I'll use just staffing as an example. A lot of the campuses outside of Mānoa have 1 or 2 people in particular functions, 1 or 2, and they are critical. I mean, and most of their knowledge is up here. That means if that person is sick, that person goes on vacation, or they have to take care of somebody, there is nobody to step into that role. We should never staff in that way. To be, because it's not fair to that individual. You know, it should never be that the person cannot have a balance in their family life, or, you know, can't take of the important things that in their personal life. But it's ridiculously threatening to the campus as well to have all of that knowledge in a single place. That might be the kind of area where we say, would shared services make more sense here? Maybe, maybe not. And those are conversations to have. And I expect that they would differ considerably depending on what role we're talking about, right? But we should be asking the question so that we can start, you know, there shouldn't be 50 people over here, overstaffed, and 2 people over there. We can make that better across the system. So people seem to be pretty receptive to the conversation. Of course, where the rubber hits the road is where you lose some autonomy to gain a lot of functionality. And we'll try and figure out where that sweet spot is based on the culture here and our ability to make our vision into a reality.
Thank you. All right, we're just a couple of minutes away from 4 o'clock. So at this time, we'd like to offer President Hensel and Provost Bruno some closing remarks.
Well, it's been an extraordinary day, beginning with quite an extraordinary morning. And I think what I have learned, and I hope what many have learned, is you have a very generous spirit, and you were very generous with your time with us today. You are going to come back and do some more time with us tomorrow, and we all know how busy you are, so none of this time you're spending with us is taking away the work. That work is still waiting for you to get to, so I want you to know how much we really appreciate that. And you're also very generous with your knowledge and your opinions. And for the students out there who heard that the president wants to listen and hear back from you, and we'll follow up, I know that's true. And you're devoted to that, you're dedicated to that. So I really want to thank you on behalf of all of us here at Mānoa.
I really appreciate that. Yeah, I think the most important thing for any leader is to be able to be truthful. You know, there are things obviously at times that we can't share that are very challenging situations that require some behind the scenes navigating, but overwhelmingly my perspective is if I have knowledge, you should have it. And if I'm making a decision, I'm going to tell you, if I tell you I'm going to do it, you have my commitment that I will be held accountable for that to happen in a way that's public so that you can hold my feet to the fire, that you have not only the right to do that, but in my mind, the responsibility to do that on behalf of an institution that, I already love and that so many of you have dedicated your lives to, literally from the time you were a student all the way through to retirement, so many people that I've met. The same token is true. you will at times hear from me a no when we can't do it because either the resources are restricted or we simply cannot navigate it at this particular time, because I want you to know that it's a true and real answer. So, in my mind, Mike, I appreciate the thank you, but the truth is this is not in addition to my work. This is my work. There is nothing more important in my work than you, and that it is working for you and meeting your expectations, and that we as a community feel like we're on the right path. So I look forward to many conversations with you in a regular kind of engagement. I invite you to send me an email. People do, and they really do, and I really do answer every one of those emails. If I don't, it got lost somewhere. It is never that I choose not to answer those emails. So just, if you're patient, I will get back to you. It may take more than a couple days. Usually it's a Saturday when I get caught up on that. And then finally, also, just wanted to also invite you to connect on social media. That is the way that we stay in touch these days. And so I actually am trying to make an effort to connect in that way. If it's of interest to you, I invite you to check those things out so that we don't just have these formal opportunities, but that there's a more regular understanding of the work that I'm doing on your behalf and the commitment, hopefully, that we all have toward advancing the institution. So thank you so much. Look forward to getting to know each of you personally, hopefully by name, in the days ahead, and appreciate you spending the time today with me. Thanks.
Thank you, Lynn.
Mahalo, President Hensel. Mahalo, Provost Bruno. President Hensel will continue her 2-day campus visit here at UH Mānoa tomorrow, and her tour across the UH system continues next Monday at Kapiolani Community College. She will continue to visit campuses and education centers through February and March. At this time, for our in-person guests, please join us for some light refreshments in the back of the ballroom. And for everyone here in person and on Zoom, mahalo for joining us. Until next time, malama pono, ahuiho, aloha.